but I digress. So here we go, you guys. Do me a favor. Hit the like, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you guys being over here. Burn it down with Kim Brown. The news coming out of Gaza, in addition to, in addition to the announcement that Israeli forces were pulling out of the Al Shifa hospital, where they claim to have, quote, killed hundreds of Palestinian militants. We know that's propaganda bullshit, that they likely killed hundreds of civilians and people seeking refuge in the hospital, and also those seeking medical treatment, because, Palestine has been completely bombed by Israeli forces. And and also in other news, the Israeli forces attacked the Iranian consulate in Syria. The story I heard about that really quickly, Joe Biden allegedly, and the Biden State Department very quickly opened up diplomatic communications between DC and Tehran. And I found this interesting that this was reported on regular ass news. And apparently the Biden administration wanted to be clear to Tehran that the US had nothing to do with that shit, which is also likely bullshit. But interesting that they would put that out on American media, right? What's up, Bags? You coming in here? Okay, she might. But anyway, you're welcome. You have thoughts? Okay, she's thinking about it. So, but the news that is dominating the headlines has to do with the fact that humanitarian aid workers from Chef Jose Andres' World Central Kitchen were killed, 7 of them killed by Israeli bombs. And many believe, and some even can prove, perhaps with some evidence, that these aid workers were intentionally struck, that there was no question that Israel knew that these people were, in fact, not Hamas, not Palestinian civilians or citizens, but they, in fact, absolutely knew that these were humanitarian aid workers. So I'm trying to figure out, where shall we begin here, Will? Let's see. Let's start, Will, with James Ray with the green scene, that first clip that I have up. This is a clip from TikTok. And it's pretty detailed and very well reported, I will say, about how it was an impossibility that this was an accident. I believe Benjamin Netanyahu, in a statement, said that the killing of these aid workers was, quote, unintentional. How is it unintentional? Israel has some of the most advanced intelligence in the world, right? Funded by our dollars. They knew who the fuck it was. So anyway, I want you guys to check out this clip from Green Scene from journalist James Ray, or at least it was from James Ray's TikTok channel. And it's pretty clear. So you guys judge for yourself. Let's take a look.
In the Gaza Strip. The airstrike targeted workers of the organization World Central Kitchen, an org that had been bringing in, up to this point, hundreds of tons of food into the Gaza Strip. The Israeli airstrike targeted one of their aid convoys, killing 3 British nationals, a US-Canadian dual national, 1 Palestinian worker, and citizens of Australia and Poland. Israeli Prime Minister said in a statement that the strike was accidental, but the World Central Kitchen CEO Aaron Gore described the strike on the convoy as a targeted attack that was unforgivable. And honestly, when you're looking at the details of this airstrike, it's incredibly hard to see how it would have been anything but intentional. World Central Kitchen staff had coordinated its activities with Israeli authorities before this convoy had gone off. The team was traveling in a de-conflicted zone in vehicles that included 2 armored cars branded with the World Central Kitchen logo. And the convoy was hit as it was leaving the Deir al-Bala warehouse, where the team had unloaded more than 100 tons of humanitarian food aid brought into Gaza on a maritime route. And the part about the vehicles being marked is particularly important. What they mean by that is that the vehicles in this convoy had clearly identifiable large logos on the roofs of the vehicles. That way Israeli drones and Israeli surveillance units could actually see very clearly what they were. And we know Israeli occupational forces must have seen the logos on top of these vehicles, because in at least one instance they shot through it. The reasoning behind this strike couldn't be more clear. Israeli occupational forces are trying to cut off any humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza as they continue to commit their genocide, and doing things like this as a way of intimidating these aid workers and their organizations into not operating in the area. And it's an operation that's proving successful. After the strike, WCK ships have been turned around with over 240 tons of aid being returned to Cyprus, alongside other organizations like the American Near East Refugee Aid Organization and Project Hope suspending their operations in the Gaza Strip. Essentially, Israeli occupational forces are deliberately targeting humanitarian aid workers to intimidate them and their organizations into pulling out of Gaza so that Palestinians in the Gaza Strip face an even more intensified crisis. And in doing so, they are murdering citizens of foreign countries, many of whom are allied to them. Truly, the depravity of Israeli occupational forces knows no bounds, but just something to think on, I guess. As always, free Palestine. Assalamu alaikum, and have a great day.
Good reporting there from the Green Scene journalist James Ray on TikTok. Couple of things, guys. I have not read the Geneva Convention from cover to cover. However, I'm goddamn certain that killing humanitarian aid workers is a war crime. Like in plain and black and white, like there's no gray area there. A war crime. Attacking a diplomatic establishment, a consulate, as was the case in Syria of the Iranian consulate that the Israelis attacked. Also, war crimes. War crimes. It's not a military installation. It's a fucking embassy, a place of diplomacy. These are not soldiers inside of the fucking embassy. And here go Israel, letting the chopper saying on every fucking body. Palestinians, yes, women, children, non-combatants, foreign citizens, aid workers, journalists. Like, how much more carnage does Israel have to commit literally against humanity before somebody steps in and intervenes? So, as it pertains to this latest horrific incident committed by IDF forces, Chef Jose Andres of the World Central Kitchen gave a statement where he condemned Israel's indiscriminate bombing. He condemned Israel murdering of civilians and says, I believe that there needs to be a ceasefire. It was also reported that Joe Biden gave Chef Jose Andres a call. And it's interesting, guys. So to be honest, I don't know much about Chef Jose Andres, except he got a lot of pull in this town. Like this nigga got pulled. This Spanish nigga, nigga from Spain, literally has a lot of pull in Washington, D.C. Like, I thought it was something else that the president actually gave him a call. But because this happened to his folks, I have a feeling that could maybe spur some sort of maybe action, maybe not. I want us to get the reaction, however, coming from Israel itself. So I believe who we're going to hear from is an IDF spokesperson giving like the worst, flimsiest, most basic, unbelievable excuse as to how these aid workers who were clearly marked from visible from the air. There's no question who they were, what they were doing there. Hold on. And back to James's point in the video, saying that the point of this attack was to basically chill the amount of humanitarian aid coming into Gaza. We're talking about over 1 million Palestinians that are starving. They're not facing famine. They're not dealing with famine-like conditions, as I heard one MSNBC personality refer to it as famine-like conditions. I said, what is famine-like conditions? Is that like starving? Because I don't see how we can have famine-like conditions and not have fucking famine, right? People are basically starving. So Israel, in addition to dropping bombs, missiles, bullets on Palestinian civilians, is now content to weaponize the food supply. It is literally going to watch hundreds of thousands of people, if not 1 million or more, literally starve to death in 2024 with the aid and assistance of the United States. This is the reality that we're in, guys. Let me tell you this real quick before I move on. I do want to play the comments from the IDF spokesperson and from fucktard goddamn Secretary Antony Blinken. I hate that. I kind of laugh at myself because I cuss these motherfuckers, but then I give them their proper titles. Like that piece of shit Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Like, yeah, him too. We're gonna hear from him too. But really quick, so the Easter holiday was at my mama's. And of course, I saw more MSNBC in half a day than I have seen in many months. And it was wild because literally there was maybe 2 or 3 hours worth of shows that was on in the background. And all these motherfuckers talked about for 3 fucking hours was Trump. All they talked about was Trump. Trump fine, Trump's bond, Trump's trial, Trump this, Trump that. And I'm like, y'all keep talking about Trump, but it's Biden's policies on what's happening in Gaza. That's going to be what's going to cost y'all liberal Democrats the election. Not Trump, nigga. Y'all. y'all keep talking about Trump all you want to your detriment. But anyway, let's listen to the bullshit if we could. You know, we do need to be, no, we don't need to be fair and balanced. However, we will listen to the spin and to the propaganda just so we are clear on what exactly it is. So, Will, if you could run those two clips, please. The first from the, I believe, IDF spokesperson or the Ministry of Defense, whoever the fuck, and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. So let's check it out.
Gaza that resulted in the tragic death of World Central Kitchen employees as they fulfilled their vital mission of bringing food to people in need. As a professional military committed to international law, we are committed to examining our operations thoroughly and transparently. I just spoke to WCK founder, Chef Jose Anders, and expressed the deepest condolences of Israel Defense Forces to the families and the entire World Central Kitchen family. We also express sincere sorrow to our allied nations who have been doing and continue to do so much to assist those in need. We have been reviewing the incident in the highest levels to understand the circumstances of what happened and how it happened. We will be opening a probe to examine this serious incident further. This will help us reduce the risk of such an event from occurring again. The incident will be investigated in the fact-finding and assessment mechanism, an independent professional and expert body. For the last few months, the IDF has been working closely with the World Central Kitchen to assist them in fulfilling their noble mission of helping bring food and humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. WCK also came to help Israelis after the massacre of October 7th. They were one of the first NGOs here. The work of WCK is critical. They are the front lines of humanity. We will get to the bottom of this and we will share our findings.
Yesterday's strike joined a record number of humanitarian workers who've been killed in this particular conflict. These people are heroes. They run into the fire, not away from it. They show the best of what humanity has to offer. We shouldn't have a situation where people who are simply trying to help their fellow human beings are themselves at grave risk. We've spoken directly to the Israeli government about this particular incident. We've urged a swift, a thorough, and impartial investigation.
There's no impartiality when it comes to the United States and Israel. So, you know, Anthony Blinken just loves to be playing in our face, just playing in our face. Anthony Blinken right there. Impartial America with the Zionists? When? This is when? Since fucking never. The statements released by the Israeli spokesperson there. I'm sorry. I kind of view this in light of the reporting that we saw earlier. It definitely sounds like premeditated murder. And to be honest, this incident could be the one, could be doubtful, but it could be maybe the most likely one because up until this point, because we know the broader world may or may not care about what's happening to actual Palestinians. But when it comes to figures like humanitarian aid workers that I'm not saying this is our perspective or even my perspective. I'm just saying. But what I'm saying is this could be the incident that could actually make it legally so, or I don't know. I can't even say legally so because there's always some legal shit already in international institutions trying to desperately curb the violence that Israel is putting on to Palestinians. So I can't even say to put on more legal pressure. Maybe this won't do anything. But when I say premeditated murder, when the Israeli spokesperson says there that they have been coordinating with World Central Kitchen since October 7th, that means that they were fully aware of the movements of these specific workers and their convoy. Unmistakable. So it is with intentionality that they targeted them and killed them. That is premeditated murder. That is a fore perceived and conceived thought and intention to kill these people because they were bringing in food. And the way that Israel has been weaponizing the food against people is absolutely disgusting. In the wake of the flour massacre, which was, where are we even a month away from the flour massacre, where hundreds, if not thousands, of starving Palestinians were going towards aid trucks when Israeli forces both opened fire upon them and ran them over under the guise of we was afraid for our lives. Get the fuck out of here. You knew what these people was rushing the trucks for. They was rushing the trucks for food. Okay. No intentions of attacking the people on the trucks bringing the food. They didn't have the energy nor the will to fight. They needed food. And this continues under the watch of the Biden administration. So hold on, because it's not just the humanitarian aid workers. Will, if you could cue up that piece about the journalists, because we've talked about this a couple times on this platform when discussing Palestine, the ways in which Israeli forces are targeting folks that they should not absolutely be targeting, including civilians, including hospitals, including sacred sites, including mosques. But many journalists, especially Palestinian journalists who have been on the ground covering the atrocities, feel as though that they have been specifically targeted by Israeli forces. You remember the two journalists we had looked at who suffered catastrophic injuries, and they too believed that IDF forces were strategically targeting them. And when have we seen that happen? Just think about it. I mean, even in the limited way we as Americans kind of know about global history and events, like the targeting specifically of journalists. I'm thinking in some of those coup situations in South America that, of course, the United States all had a hand in, South and Central America, where journalists were being killed. I know Putin had a hand in doing away with some journalists over in Russia, but the numbers of journalists that have been killed since October 7th, since and before October 7th, actually, is staggering. Remember Shireen Abu Alek, the Palestinian American sister, again, targeted by Israeli forces, and even her funeral procession was targeted by the Israelis. Remember when they knocked the coffin out the people's hand? I mean, barbarism on unholy levels. But anyway, we'll cue that up. And listen, guys, this is a few minutes. And I apologize. I don't have details really to give you about the interviewer and the interviewee, but it is a compelling discussion. And I think it was 50 Shades Away who had it posted on their Twitter feed. But I don't think they credited who was actually doing the talking. But it is it's blood chilling, to be perfectly honest, to listen to the ways in which this particular Al Jazeera journalist has been targeted, and the incredible losses that they suffered of their most immediate family members because of Israeli missile strikes. So you got that ready, Will? Let's go ahead and get into that.
The voices, one of the people you've talked about, you've posted about, you've written about is Wael Al-Dagdouh, him being hospitalized. He's a Palestinian journalist and the bureau chief of Al Jazeera in Gaza City. What can you tell me about this man?
If Wael Al-Dagdouh wasn't Palestinian, he'd be on the cover of Time magazine right now. He would be the most celebrated journalist in the world. Wael Al-Dagdouh is from Gaza. He has been in Israeli prisons. He has been under Israeli airstrikes. He has seen the worst of the occupation before he's seen the worst of the genocide. While on TV, I mean, and this is insane when you think about it. We have over 100 journalists now, right? That's more than any conflict in history that have been killed. And there is sufficient evidence by international watchdogs that this is intentional, that journalists have been killed intentionally. But then their families, Wa'il was reporting on TV when an airstrike hits his wife, 2 kids, and a grandchild. He goes to the scene and he said this, you never expect as a journalist to be the subject of the story. Suddenly, the camera's on him, mourning over his dead wife and kids and grandkid. And he even says it in Arabic, he says, they're taking it out on our children. They're taking it out on our children. I've heard this from multiple people that have had relatives targeted, that I wish it was me instead. He gets back on camera the same day because he feels a responsibility to continue to cover the lives of the people of Gaza. He understands that his story, as devastating as it is not unique in regards to the people of Gaza, that there are many people whose families have been killed in airstrikes. All 2 million people have been traumatized in some way. And so he gets back on camera, tells the story again. And then he is targeted himself. His arm is struck. His cameraman, Samar Abu Daqqa, dies in front of him. He bleeds out. Wa'il watches him bleed out for hours. And while any aid workers try to reach them in the building that they were in, snipers would shoot all of those that were rushing to Samar. So he watches his cameraman and one of his best friends bleed out to death. Wa'il goes to the hospital. His arm is wrapped up, gets treatment. He's back on camera the next day. A few weeks later, another child is killed again with his friend in a car. So this was a targeted airstrike. His son is driving, and his son and his best friend are hit in an airstrike. Wa'il leads the funeral prayer, is back on camera again, and speaks with such dignity, with such compassion. One of the things that always gets to me as a Palestinian, right, and as a Muslim too, is that we are portrayed to be these beasts and savages. Tell me a man that would be put through what Wa'il was put through and still stand on that pulpit and in front of the world with such dignity, with such grace. He continues to tell the story. Wa'il has become a hero to many of us, and he would be a hero in a world that wasn't anti-Palestinian. And unfortunately, Wa'il has not only lost his family, he's not only lost much of his own existence, but Wa'il is part of the greater story of erasure. So even though he's telling the story of the people of Gaza, and he is the story of the people of Gaza, most people will never learn about Wa'il al-Dahduh.
I mean, I was feeling something physical just by listening to him recount all of Wa'il's unspeakable tragedies and traumas that he's experienced personally, that he's witnessed personally, again, since and before October 7th. This is real life, everybody. And, this isn't Ukraine and fucking Russia. Again, bad situations, no doubt. And the US has a strong hand to play in that situation as well, no doubt. It hits different when we're talking about Israel and Palestine and the way the US is, I mean, enabling is actually not the right word. I mean, maybe guiding, maybe ringleading, maybe even dictating the way this extermination of Palestinians is occurring. And just thinking about the kinds of victims, you guys, we're talking about tens of thousands of children. Half of the victims are kids, babies. Joe Biden is well aware of this. Whew. Will, pop up that Guardian article for me, please. So, of course, Joe Biden is aware because, Israel has a long history, even a pretty well documented recent history of not giving a fuck about international laws, about adhering to international guidelines when it comes to rules of engagement for combat. So check this out. So back in 2006, and I remember the story. I'll never forget the story actually, because I remember I was screaming at the television, like just kind of like, how the fuck did this happen? This is back in '06, you guys, from The Guardian. Israel ignores repeated warnings before killing UN observers. And this happened in southern Lebanon. And Israel has, again, a well documented history of firing shots into Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah leaders in Lebanon with drones, armed drones and shit, basically doing assassinations within Lebanon's borders. And Lebanon is like, okay, niggas, keep your shit up. Nigga, we paying attention. So just really quickly. So it says Israel came under mounting pressure last night to explain why its military ignored repeated warnings um, about the placement of UN observers and bombed a prominent UN post in southern Lebanon, killing 4 unarmed international observers. Now let's pause right there. Unarmed international observers. I'm sorry, did I misspeak earlier and said peacekeepers? No, because the peacekeepers carry guns, because capitalism, right? The motherfuckers carry peace. They carry the AK, right? But the observers, the United Nations observers, is exactly as titled. Observe, right? And Israel was aware, the Israeli military knew that there were unarmed people, personnel of the United Nations, in this building in southern Lebanon. The people cried out, hey, please don't bomb us. You know who we are. Listen, we are unarmed UN observers. And Israel said, pull the trigger. Pull the trigger. And I don't recall there being any, I think there was a tad bit of an international outcry. But did Israel have to go to the International Criminal Court for this? I don't think so. Did they get sanctioned by the US or by Western powers? I don't think so. Israel gets to do whatever the fuck they want to do, just like America, by the way, who actually does the exact same shit. Will fire missiles, bombs into sovereign nations. We were talking about this a little bit on the Remix Morning Show this morning. My goofy ass asked, how come Syria doesn't have any state sovereignty? Because America doesn't give a fuck about Syrian state sovereignty, Kim. Okay? America will let the chopper sing wherever the fuck it feels like. And such is the case with Israel as well. So again, you guys, these are policies that we cannot stand to run. But the problem is, when it comes to, do we have any alternatives? Do we have anybody potentially waiting in the wings in the halls of power, who could maybe take us in a different direction? And unfortunately, the answer is no. The answer is no. Because trust me, if Donald Trump were to get into office, all this shit would be as bad, possibly worse. But we're not doing the lesser of two evils. That's done. That's finished. And unfortunately, well, let me not say unfortunately. The Democrats are going to have to feel this one. And I want to big up to everyone in Wisconsin tonight. There's a number of states holding their primaries. I was made aware that there is also a uncommitted type movement happening in Wisconsin to encourage would-be Democratic primary voters to make a protest vote and vote for uncommitted. Though it's not called uncommitted in Wisconsin, it's called something else, but it means uncommitted, yeah? And when I heard the numbers total of this uncommitted vote that have happened already in some primaries, we know about the 100,000 plus in Michigan. I believe Washington State had nearly 60,000 uncommitted votes. There was another state, was it Colorado, gang? That had a pretty significant, tens of thousands of voters showed up to the Democratic primary to vote uncommitted versus Joe Biden, right? And listen, These numbers may not sound like much in the primary season, but I want you guys to consider a couple things. First of all, the uncommitted movement is relatively new. This is not something that organizers have been building up to for months and months and months. It sort of sprang up organically out of Michigan in advance of the Michigan primary, right? So this is not something that people have been spreading the word about for 6 to 12 months, right? So not a lot of people even know about it. So just think about the tens of thousands that have already showed up across at least 3 states, right, to cast this kind of protest vote. That those numbers could easily double by the time we make it to a general election. And if the shit is close, oh nigga, if shit is close, that could make the difference, especially in a place like Michigan, especially in places hotly contested like Wisconsin. Alicia, what do you even think maybe about Minnesota? Like, is Minnesota possibly in play for Biden to lose? Not necessarily for Trump to win, though Trump would win, but not because more people voted for Trump. It'd be less people turning out for Joe Biden. Y'all, these niggas ain't ready. And I can tell you they not ready. Because MSDNC, all they can talk about is Trump. Okay. Trump's not going to be the reason you lose. Okay. Trump being found guilty or not guilty in his myriad of whatever the fucks is not going to be the reason why you lose. It's going to be people showing up to vote their local races, to vote their referendums, and not vote for president. And the Democrats are going to be stuck scratching their head. Well, how did this happen? We see that all these people turned out, but how come Joe Biden lost? Because we've been telling y'all dumb motherfuckers for the past year that this nigga was going to lose, but I guess y'all ain't believe us. So that sounds like a y'all problem. And to be clear, guys, I don't subscribe to this liberal narrative. I mean, I know I maybe sound like a crazy person when I say this, but I don't see our conditions being necessarily worsened under Donald Trump. I don't want Trump to be president. I don't want Biden to be president. Like, I mean, we talking about the best of the two terribles. Fuck both these motherfuckers. But I'm not going for the rigmarole that, you know, I'm gonna be the reason America falls because I didn't vote for Joe Biden. Man, my mama's not in here. She went to the Rick James place. Suck my dick, dog. just suck my dick. Mama gonna be mad when she see this on the replay. I told you about saying that. Mama, I'm Gen X. I am crude out here. What you want from me? What's going on? Big dumb animal. Thank you so much for your super chat support. Jesus, I hope this is nice. Oh, it is. Okay, you said thank you, Kim. And the chat. Thank you so much, Big Dumb Animal. What a name. You says, as someone who scoot. Ooh, who feels alone. Don't feel alone out here, Big Dumb Animal. Who feels alone on this issue in life. Yeah, it helps to have or helps having this. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. This shit, I can't read. Oh, this channel for support. That's wonderful. Hey, Big Dumb Animal, please go subscribe to Black Power Media as well. We crew out here. We all on the same page and shit. Now there are varying levels of articulation. Let me put myself on the on that end of the spectrum. But if you go over to BPM, they're gonna rock it out for you over there. if you're looking for someone doing a little bit more than just ranting and raving like myself, Big Dumb Animal, you're more than welcome over here, man. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate that. So anyway, gang, the latest massacre occurring in Israel, this time impacting somebody's, right? And because it impacted a quote somebody like Chef Jose Andres, and again, not to diminish the work that Chef Jose Andres does, I just know he is a DC elitist. You know what I'm saying? And let me a moment here. Let me I will shout out the World Central Kitchen because again, they've been to Haiti a lot to feed people. They've been a bunch of places wherever the fuck shit goes wrong, natural catastrophe, war zone, etc. Jose Andres will send his people out to make sure that those on the ground and most affected do get fed. So I do respect absolutely that the work that he and his organization do. But I also know, like I said, Jose Andres is a elite here in DC. So as much good work as he does internationally, for example, here locally, when the DC City Council was considering raising the minimum wage of tipped workers like servers, to, I can't remember what it was, 15 an hour. I don't recall what the actual number was, but above, the $2.30 that oftentimes wait staff and servers will earn as a base minimum wage. Jose Andres was against that. Like, he was actually rallying against it. He and the rest of the restaurant lobby were opposed to raising the minimum wage for tipped restaurant workers. So this thing is not perfect. Okay. Like, and nobody is, to be clear. But I just wanted to make sure that we understand, at least in part, maybe even part of the contradictions of somebody like him who does good humanitarian work globally. So there's that.